The Killing Hours. What happened before sunrise. Subscribe for more real prison stories. Like, share, and join the discussion below. The pounding bass music had barely ended when chaos broke loose. It was just after 2:00 a.m. on June 12, 2016, at Pulse Nightclub in Orlando. A night that was supposed to be full of laughter, dancing, celebration. Suddenly, gunshots erupted. The sound echoed behind the bar, bounced off walls, shattered the beats. People screamed, glass broke, bodies dropped. Someone shouted, "Everybody down!" Panic erupted. In the dim light, a lone gunman stood at the south door, rifle in hand. Bullets flew into the crowd. 50 lives would be lost before sunrise, more than 50 more wounded. And somewhere in the chaos, someone inside hid in a bathroom stall, whispering for help through walls stained with fear. How did it come to this? Months before that terrible night, Orlando's Pulse was warmly lit, full of music, friends, Latin night energy. Families, college students, tourists, many young, many LGBT+, walked into the club expecting to dance until dawn. Among them was Marcus, studying theater at UCF, celebrating his last weekend of classes. There was Lena, visiting from New York, excited to experience Orlando's music scene. There were dozens of others, each with stories, dreams, people who loved them. At about 2:00 a.m., Omar Mateen, 29, left his car, walked toward Pulse carrying a rifle and a handgun. Surveillance and after-action reports show he bypassed security, entered through the south entrance, and immediately opened fire on patrons in the front parlor. An off-duty security officer exchanged shots briefly with him, but Mateen pushed forward into the dance floor. The club erupted into screams. Some ducked under tables, others rushed to exits. In those first few seconds, dozens were hit. Many didn't know where to go. Then, dispatches. Over police radios, shots fire, followed by reports of multiple people down. Officers rushed toward Pulse, unsure of how many were inside, whether hostages were being taken. Marcus found himself pressed against a doorframe, heart hammering, unable to move. Lena crawled toward the back exit, hearing gunfire all around. Her phone lit up with texts. "Are you okay?" But no signal. And just when it seemed minutes couldn't get worse, the gunman retreated to the bathrooms, barricaded himself, and turned what had begun as a massacre into a hostage situation. The doors locked. The lights flickered. And somewhere inside that bathroom, a voice cried out, "Please, don't let this be the last time I call my mom." Cliffhanger. The police outside knew hostages were inside, heard pleading over the phone lines, but did not yet know how to reach them without risking more lives. If you're ready, I can write Chapter 2, building from that extreme moment, continuing with slower burn investigation, emotional detail, then ending on another cliffhanger. Do you want me to proceed? Outside Pulse Nightclub, the flashing red and blue lights painted the wet Orlando streets in streaks of chaos. Police cars blocked every lane, helicopters hovered above. It was now past 2:30 a.m. and the sound of gunfire had gone silent. But inside, the terror was far from over. Officers didn't know how many were still alive, how many were hurt, or if explosives were inside. Through phone calls and whispered 911 messages, dispatchers pieced together the horror. Some callers said the gunman was talking on the phone. Others said he was reloading. Every minute felt like an hour. Inside the bathroom stalls, the air grew thick. Survivors pressed their faces to the floor, hoping not to be heard. Marcus clutched his phone, listening to the faint sounds of crying. Lena whispered prayers in the dark, texting her brother that she loved him. Many messages never sent. Cell service was jammed. The gunman's voice echoed through the hall, calm and chilling. told a hostage he wanted America to feel the pain others had felt overseas. It was the first sign of what investigators would later call a terror-inspired attack. But in that moment, it felt more like madness than ideology. At 3 a.m., SWAT teams arrived. Officers in helmets, shields, and tactical gear moved carefully, guided by floor plans pulled from the city's archives. Negotiators tried to reach the shooter by phone. He answered once, saying there were explosives in the building, then went silent again. Every call after that went unanswered. Police couldn't risk charging in. Any wrong move could cost dozens more lives, so they waited, listened, and gathered what little they could. By now, families across Orlando were waking to breaking news alerts. Mass shooting at nightclub. Multiple casualties. Parents called their kids again and again, desperate for a reply. Downtown hospitals prepared emergency rooms for mass trauma victims. In a nearby parking lot, first responders tended to the wounded who managed to escape, bloodied, shocked but alive. One officer whispered to another, "We're running out of time." As dawn approached, negotiators finally caught a break. One of the trapped victims managed to relay that the gunman was barricaded in the north bathroom. SWAT began drawing a plan. Blow through the outer wall, create an escape route, take him down. But as they lined up outside, ready to breach, a single gunshot echoed from within. Everything froze. No one knew who had fired, a victim, a warning, or the start of something far worse. And that's when the radios crackled again. "He's moving." The moment the radio crackled, the entire command post shifted into motion. Officers shouted coordinates, and SWAT units locked in formation. It was 5:07 a.m. The final moments before sunrise, the darkest point of the night. They called it the killing hose, Oos. And no one inside or outside the building would ever forget what came next. The tactical team moved fast. With armored vehicles positioned at the west wall, police fired a series of controlled explosions. The blasts ripped through the concrete with a thunderous echo, filling the street with dust and smoke. Within seconds, officers stormed through the opening, shouting commands, flashlights cutting through the haze. Survivors stumbled out in tears, their faces lit by the glow of emergency lights. Some crawled, others were carried. The chaos that had been trapped inside for hours finally spilled into the open air. Then, more shots rang out. Inside the club, gunfire erupted one last time. Officers fired back, following the sound through shattered glass and overturned furniture. It lasted less than a minute, a short, brutal exchange, before silence fell again. When the smoke cleared, the gunman was down. The nightmare was finally over. But as the sun began to rise over Orlando, the cost of those hours came into view. 49 people were gone. 53 more were wounded. Outside, a line of ambulances waited as medics moved quickly from victim to victim. Officers who had held their breath for hours now stood frozen, some with tears in their eyes. The streets smelled of gunpowder and morning rain. Journalists began to arrive, cameras rolling, unaware of the full horror behind the police tape. And just beyond the flashing lights, families started to gather, waiting for names, for hope, for answers. By noon, the country was watching. News anchors spoke in disbelief, their voices heavy with grief. The word Orlando trended worldwide, a name now bound to tragedy. President Obama called it an act of terror and an act of hate. Across the nation, vigils formed. Candles flickered in silence as people prayed for the lives lost and the ones who would never be the Baremos. In the days that followed, investigators pieced together the gunman's path, his pledges, his anger, his lies. But no explanation could fill the hole he left behind. And as night fell again over Orlando, the city glowed in rainbow light. A promise that love, even in the face of horror, would always outshine the darkness. If this case stunned you, the next one will haunt you. Subscribe for what's coming.